You know what? I'm honestly sick of pretending I'm some kind of monster for having needs that weren't being met. Everyone wants to paint me as this villain, but nobody wants to talk about what it's like being married to a man who treats you like you're made of glass instead of flesh and blood. Like you're some precious little princess instead of a woman with actual desires. Miles and I met in high school, and God, everyone just knew we'd end up together. The perfect couple. They said, high school sweethearts destined for happily ever after. What a joke. Back then, his devotion felt romantic. The way he'd carry my books, walk me to every class, plan these elaborate dates even though we were just teenagers. I thought I'd won the lottery getting a guy who was so completely obsessed with making me happy. 17 years of marriage later, I realized I hadn't won anything. I'd trapped myself with a man who worshipped me so completely that he forgot to actually be a man. Don't get me wrong, Miles is attractive. He works out, takes care of himself, provides for our family. We have 3 daughters together, and he's an incredible father, always calling them his princesses and me his queen. But that was part of the problem, wasn't it? Queens don't get fucked properly. Queens get treated with reverence and respect and gentle touches that make you want to scream. I remember the exact moment I started looking elsewhere. It was a Tuesday morning in early 2019, and Miles was making me breakfast before work like he did every single day. Perfectly scrambled eggs, fresh coffee, even a little flour from our garden on the tray. He kissed my forehead and told me I looked beautiful. Asked if there was anything else I needed before he got the girls ready for school, and I wanted to throw the whole tray at the wall. Not because he was being awful, because he was being perfect. Again. Like he had been every single day for 17 years. Perfect. Predictable. Safe. Boring Miles who never challenged me, never surprised me, never made my heart race with anything other than mild irritation. That's when Leo started at my office. Leo wasn't particularly handsome, not compared to Miles anyway. But God, the way that man looked at me, like he wanted to devour me, like I was something to be conquered instead of worshipped. When he'd lean over my desk to discuss a project, I could smell his cologne and feel the heat radiating off his body. And for the first time in years, I felt like a woman instead of a wife and mother. The flirting started innocently enough. Compliments about my work, lingering looks during meetings, casual touches that lasted just a second too long. Miles never noticed. Of course. He was too busy being the perfect husband, asking about my day and actually listening to every boring detail, offering to rub my feet after work, suggesting we watch whatever movie I wanted. Meanwhile, Leo was sending me texts that made my pulse quicken. Nothing inappropriate at first. Just work stuff with a hint of something more. Great presentation today. Isabel, you looked incredible up there. Simple things that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. By summer, we were having lunch together regularly. Just the two of us, talking about everything except our respective home lives. He made me laugh in ways I'd forgotten I could. Made me feel clever and desirable and alive. When he looked at me, I didn't see the gentle adoration I got from Miles. I saw hunger, raw, animalistic want that made my stomach flip and my skin burn. Miles, bless his pathetic heart, was thrilled that I seemed happier, started commenting on how radiant I looked, how much energy I had, even suggested we plan a romantic getaway. Just the two of us. The irony was almost painful. Here I was, emotionally cheating on him with a coworker, and he was crediting himself for my improved mood. The physical affair started in September. Leo had been working late on a project, and I volunteered to stay and help. The office was empty, just the two of us under those harsh fluorescent lights. And when he looked up from his computer and caught me staring, something just snapped. He kissed me against the copy machine, rough and demanding, his hands tangling in my hair in a way that would have messed up the perfect style Miles complimented every morning, and I kissed him back like my life depended on it. Because for the first time in years, I felt like it did. I've wanted to do that since the day I met you, he whispered against my neck, and I actually moaned. When was the last time Miles had made me moan? When was the last time he'd even tried? We didn't have sex that night, but we might as well have. The kissing, the touching, the way he pressed me against the wall and made me feel small and feminine and desperate. It was more intimate than anything I'd shared with my husband in months. I drove home that night with my lips still swollen and my underwear damp, and Miles greeted me at the door with a glass of wine and questions about my day. Sweet, considerate questions that made me want to scream because he was being so fucking nice, while I was standing there having just betrayed him in the most fundamental way possible. You look flushed. Honey, are you feeling okay? He asked, reaching up to feel my forehead with those gentle hands that had never grabbed me, never demanded anything from me, never made me feel like I might actually lose control. Just tired. I lied. and he immediately suggested I take a hot bath while he finished cleaning the kitchen. Because of course he did. Perfect. Thoughtful Miles, who anticipated my every need except the ones that actually mattered. The affair escalated quickly after that. Leo and I found excuses to work late together, to travel to the same conferences, to steal moments whenever we could. The sex was incredible, urgent and desperate, and nothing like the careful, considerate lovemaking I got at home. Leo fucked me like he owned me, like I was his to take, and I came harder for him than I had for anyone in years. Meanwhile, Miles continued being the ideal husband, bringing me coffee in bed, planning date nights I had no interest in, telling me constantly how much he loved me and how lucky he felt to be married to me. The guilt should have been crushing. But mostly it just made me angry. How could he be so blind? How could he look at me every day and not see that I was slipping away? I started picking fights, hoping to provoke some kind of real reaction from him. I'd criticize his parenting, complain about money, make snide comments about his family. And every single time, he'd listen patiently and ask how he could do better. Never fought back, never got angry, just absorbed whatever venom I spewed and tried to fix whatever imaginary problem I'd invented. You're too good to me, I told him one night after he'd spent an hour rubbing my back without me even asking. And I meant it as an insult, but he just smiled and kissed my shoulder. There's no such thing as being too good to the woman you love, he said, and I wanted to slap him. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? He loved me too much, completely, unconditionally, suffocatingly. There was no challenge, no chase, no thrill. I was his queen, his goddess, his everything, and it was the most unsexy thing in the world. Leo never told me I was too good for him. Leo told me I was trouble, that I was going to be the death of him, that he couldn't stop thinking about me even though he knew he should. Leo made me feel dangerous and desirable and worth risking everything for The affair continued through the fall and into winter. 4 months of the most intense sexual and emotional connection I'd ever experienced. While my husband continued treating me like I was made of spun glass, 4 months of actually feeling alive again. Of remembering what it was like to be wanted instead of just loved. I got sloppy toward the end. Started leaving my phone face up, taking calls in other rooms, coming home later and later with increasingly creative excuses. Part of me wanted to get caught. I think wanted to force some kind of real emotion out of Miles. Even if it was anger or hurt or betrayal, anything would have been better than the endless, patient understanding. The confrontation came on January 3rd, 2020. I'd been careless with my phone, and Miles saw a text from Leo that left no room for interpretation. Not the content, just the tone, the intimacy, the casual way he said he missed me. I found Miles sitting at the kitchen table when I got home from work, my phone in his hands, his face completely blank. For a moment, I actually felt hopeful, finally. A real reaction, finally. Some actual emotion from the man I'd married. "We need to talk," he said. And his voice was so calm it made my skin crawl. I tried to explain, to minimize, to make it seem like less than it was. But he'd already gone through my messages, seen the photos, read the explicit details of what Leo and I had been doing together. There was no talking my way out of it. "How long?" he asked, still in that eerily calm voice. "It doesn't matter," I said, which was stupid. But I was panicking. This wasn't going how I'd imagined it would. 4 months. He said, scrolling through the messages, 4 months of you fucking another man while I was here taking care of our children and worrying about why you seemed so distant. The profanity shocked me. Miles never swore, especially not at me. Never spoke to me with anything other than gentle respect and adoration. For a split second, I felt a thrill of excitement. Finally. He was showing some fire, but then I looked at his face, really looked at it, and saw something that made my blood freeze. It wasn't anger or passion or any of the emotions I'd been craving from him for years. It was disgust, complete, utter disgust. Like he was looking at something repulsive that he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "Miles, please." I started, but he held up a hand to stop me. "I need you to send the girls to your parents for the weekend," he said. "We're going to figure out what happens next, and they don't need to see this." I spent the worst weekend of my life at my parents' house, fielding questions from my daughters about why Daddy looked so sad when we left, making up lies about work stress and adult problems they wouldn't understand. My mother kept giving me concerned looks, asking if everything was okay at home, and I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I'd done. When I came back on Monday, Miles was different. Not angry. I could have dealt with anger. Cold. Completely, utterly cold in a way that made the man I'd married for 17 years feel like a stranger. "I saw a lawyer," he said without preamble. 3 lawyers. Actually, my heart dropped into my stomach. Miles. We can work through this. People survive affairs all the time. We can go to counseling. We can. They all told me the same thing. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. In this state, with our situation, you'd get the house, you'd get primary custody. I'd see my daughters every other weekend and pay you alimony until you decide to remarry your boyfriend. The word boyfriend came out like he was spitting poison. So here's what's going to happen, he said. We're going to stay married. We're going to live in this house together and raise our daughters together. But our marriage is over. You killed it when you decided to spread your legs for your coworker. I started crying then. Ugly, desperate sobs that should have moved him to comfort me the way he always had before, but he just sat there watching me fall apart with those cold, dead eyes. You can cry all you want, he said. You can beg and plead and promise to change. But I will never, ever forgive you for this. You're not my wife anymore. You're just the woman who lives in my house and takes care of my children. That's when I dropped to my knees in front of him, literally begging for forgiveness, promising I'd do anything to make this right. And for just a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Miles, the one who couldn't bear to see me in pain. Don't humiliate yourself, he said quietly, and helped me to my feet. But even that small kindness felt like a slap. Because it wasn't forgiveness, it was pity. The next 3 years have been a special kind of hell. We sleep in the same bed now, but only for appearances. We have sex occasionally, but it's purely mechanical. Him meeting his needs while making it crystal clear that it has nothing to do with desire for me. Don't get any ideas, he told me after the first time, rolling away from me like I was contaminated. This isn't reconciliation. This is just biology. We go to therapy, both individual and couples, but nothing changes. He's polite, civil, even kind sometimes when the girls are around. But the man who used to worship the ground I walked on, who used to call me his queen and treat me like I was the most precious thing in his world, is gone. I killed him as surely as if I'd put a bullet in his head. The therapist keeps asking if we can rebuild trust, if we can find our way back to love. Miles always gives the same answer. Some things can't be fixed. I know what he's doing. He's waiting, biding his time until our youngest daughters turn 18, until he can divorce me without losing everything he's worked for. He's playing the long game, sacrificing his own happiness to make sure he doesn't lose his children and his financial security to the woman who betrayed him. And the most infuriating part, he's still a better man than I deserve. Still an incredible father. Still takes care of the house. Still treats me with more respect than most women get from their husbands. But it's all surface now. All performance. The love, the adoration, the worship that I took for granted for so many years, it's gone forever. I see him sometimes, when he thinks I'm not looking, and there's this emptiness in his eyes that wasn't there before. Like something essential has been carved out of him, and I know I did that. I took a man who loved me completely and turned him into this hollow shell of himself. The worst part is that I still don't really regret it. The affair with Leo was the most alive I'd felt in years. It ended when Miles found out. Leo wasn't interested in being the other man in a messy divorce situation, but those 4 months were worth it. They reminded me that I was more than just a wife and mother, that I was a woman with needs and desires that mattered. Maybe that makes me a monster. Maybe I am the villain in this story, but I can't bring myself to apologize for wanting more than a life of gentle, suffocating devotion. I can't regret discovering what real passion felt like, even if it cost me everything. Miles will leave me eventually, maybe in a few years when the girls graduate. Maybe sooner if he decides he can't keep up the pretense anymore. And when he does, I'll probably lose the house, lose my comfortable life, lose the security I've taken for granted for so long, but I'll also be free. Free from the prison of being someone's queen, someone's precious treasure that needs to be protected and cherished and handled with kid gloves. Free to find someone who sees me as an equal, as a partner, as a woman worth fighting for instead of just worshiping. Miles was a good husband, the best husband, by most people's standards. But being good isn't the same as being right for someone. And maybe, just maybe, destroying our marriage was the kindest thing I could have done for both of us. Even if he'll never see it that way, even if I'm the only one who will ever understand that sometimes love isn't enough. And sometimes the person who loves you most is the person you need to hurt the most to finally break free. I know how that sounds. I know what people think of women like me, but I'd rather be the villain in someone else's story than the victim in my own, even if it means spending the rest of my life sleeping next to a man who used to worship me and now can barely stand to touch me. Even if it means knowing that I had everything most women dream of, and I threw it away because it wasn't enough. Some prisons are made of gold. And some chains are made of love, and sometimes the only way to break free is to burn everything down.